The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone present to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. In the absence of clergy, let us bow our heads in a moment of silent reflection or prayer. Reading of the Journal.
In Senate, Saturday, January 13, 2024, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Friday, January 12, 2024 was read and approved. On motion, the Senate adjourned.
Without objection, Journal stands approved as read. Presentations of positions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports of state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Gineris.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Can we begin by taking up Privileged Resolution 1667? Read that resolution's title only and recognize Leader Stewart-Cousins.
There's a privileged resolution at the desk. The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 1667 by Senator Stewart-Cousins, congratulating the Pace University Women's Lacrosse team upon the occasion of capturing the 2023 NCAA Division II Women's Lacrosse Championship on May 21, 2023.
Leader Stewart-Cousins on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I am so honored to welcome the Pace Women's Lacrosse team, who are champions, national champions in their sport. These women started out, they ranked number 3, and they got to be number 1. They are the first NCAA collegiate team in Westchester County to win a national championship. Give it up. And I thought that it would be great to have them here because not only are they extraordinary, and I happen to be a double alum from Pace, and I happen to represent them, but they also, under the leadership of their coach, Tricia Mulfiler, most of them are New Yorkers. Most of them have never been to our beautiful capital. And most of them were, certainly all of them, were born after the Title IX enactment, which allowed for the government to acknowledge women's ability to play sports and to be funded the way that men's teams were funded. I grew up at a time where girls were expected to be cheerleaders, stay on the sidelines, and not really participate in serious sports. It's important to know that government works in many ways to level the playing field. And when we level the playing field, we get to see excellence from everyone. So these young women who proudly took Westchester County and New York State into a national arena in a very, very tough game. Lacrosse is not an easy sport, certainly not for the faint of heart, but they emerged not only champions, but representing a new level of excellence for the people of our state, for certainly the people of my county, and for women everywhere. So I want to congratulate our team, and thank you for coming. You braved one of the toughest days of the year to be here, but I hope that you have found your trip here gratifying and know that we are inspired by your national success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam Leader, for introducing this resolution. Title IX, you went from Title IX to national title. I think that is an incredible accomplishment. And if not for the recognition that women are not just equal, they can't exceed us as men in sports. I look at Serena Williams, who is the greatest athlete of all time, in my humble opinion. To do what she's been able to do while pregnant in a major, if you know the story, has been nothing short of fantastic. But nothing short of fantastic is bringing a national championship home to Pace. I start thinking about it because I'm a huge sports fan. And so I think about the levels that you had to go through, not just during the games, because during the games, yes, you can be on, but the hours of practice that nobody saw, the dedication that it took, to not only, because you're student athletes and the student is first. So you have to make sure that you continue to keep a minimum grade point average in order to be eligible to play. And I'm sure that you're more than eligible to play. In order to do that, you had to balance an incredibly challenging academic and rigorous academic schedule with a really rigorous national championship level of play. And so I just want to congratulate you as a representative of Westchester County, and as a father of two daughters who are athletically inclined, well more so than their father, who hopefully, I don't know if they're going to pick up lacrosse. They haven't done so as of yet. They both got a mean crossover and a good jump shot, so maybe they'll be national champions of their own. But you should know that there are legions of young girls that you don't know, that you haven't met, and you may not meet, that look up to you, that idolize you, that appreciate you. So understand that you are incredible, you are amazing, and you are national champions. Congratulations.
Senator Mayer on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Leader, for bringing this important resolution to the floor. And as someone who lives in Westchester and proud to represent Westchester, I just could not be more thrilled than to see you all up there with those beautiful smiles, really taking in this day and this beautiful place. I want to remind everybody that your winning game was 19-9, the most goals ever scored in a Division II women's lacrosse game, and it is an incredible accomplishment. The other thing I want to say is, I always say that people should engage in team sports before they run for office, because you do learn this lesson of teamwork. You do learn to trust each other. You learn to put yourself not always first, and you also put your faith in your coach. And I want to thank your coach, Coach Malfetta, for her leadership and obviously her incredible talents in getting you there. But if you all want to run for office, some of us are getting old, live in Westchester, so just come see me afterwards. I look forward to coaching you in the paths of politics, but you have all the skills you'll need to succeed. Congratulations.
Senator Weber on the resolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader, for bringing this resolution forward today. You know, I'm a 1991 proud alumni of Pace University in Pleasantville, so we're proud to recognize you here today. You know, as a lot of us here, I have young daughters, two young daughters, one who plays field hockey at RPI, who played lacrosse for Suffern, and you know, Suffern grows great girls lacrosse teams over the years. She went into field hockey, but I know the commitment that it takes to really excel at that level. And you know, you did Pace proud, you did New York proud, and I congratulate you and thank you for being here today. And thank you, Leader, for bringing this to the floor.
Senator Harkam on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam Leader, for bringing this resolution to the floor. Congratulations. I stand because until recently with redistricting, I used to represent Pace, and I'm right over the line is a district line, and was proud to work with the administration on the Student Veterans Center, which is in the Student Center. But I want to follow up on what my colleagues were talking about regarding Title IX and the development of young women and leadership abilities, because as was mentioned, it's not just about sports. Yes, you did an incredible thing, and you will remember this for the rest of your lives, but the skills that you are learning, teamwork, setting goals, overcoming obstacles, overcoming challenges, These will serve you for the rest of your life. And I used to coach youth soccer in my town, just the town league. But some of these then young girls, then young women went on to play travel and sports at a higher level. And there are times when I'll be in the grocery store and just this remarkably polished and accomplished young woman will come up to me, Coach Pete, Coach Pete. And it's certainly nothing that I did, but the process they were on, doctors, academics, now in the business community, and it's because of the skills that they learned in athletics and being part of team sports, as Senator Mayer mentioned. So we're glad you're here. Congratulations, Godspeed, and come back with number 2 next year. Thank you.
Senator Fernandez on the resolution.
Madam President, I would be remiss as a fellow lady legislator from Westchester that I do not stand up and congratulate you amazing ladies for your achievement. Nationals is a big deal, so we all know all over this country, many students, such as like yourself, have done the time, the dedication, the training, the teamwork building to get to this level, and you have done it. You're making New York proud. You're making us women proud. Congratulations again and again and again, and I look forward to seeing you again in number 1 place. Thank you.
So before I congratulate you on behalf of the Senate, is a Pace University alum from New York City, multiple times over. Congratulations, ladies. It is great to see you doing great things. Congratulations to all of you. So, to our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please all stand and be recognized. The question is on the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution is adopted. Senator Gineris.
Madam President, we have an additional privileged resolution at the desk, Resolution 1668. Let's take that one up next, read it in its entirety, and recognize Leader Stewart-Cousins.
It's a privileged resolution at the desk. The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 1668 by Senator Stewart-Cousins, commemorating the observance of the 39th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the state of New York on January 15, 2024. Whereas from time to time, we take note of certain individuals whom we wish to recognize for their valued contributions and to publicly acknowledge their endeavors, which have enhanced the basic humanity among us all. And whereas attendant to such concern and in full accord with its longstanding traditions, it is the custom of this legislative body to join the people of this great Empire State in proudly observing the 39th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the state of New York on January 15, 2024, taking note of his many accomplishments and contributions to mankind. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born the grandson of a slave into a segregated society in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929, and he was instrumental in formulating a policy which ultimately destroyed legal apartheid in the southern states of our nation. And whereas in February of 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about the inevitability of his death and hoped that when we spoke of his life, we would not concentrate on his academic achievements, that he graduated from Morehouse College, that he attended the Crozer Theological Seminary in Boston University, where he earned a doctorate in systematic theology. And whereas, after returning from Crozer, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his first sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta and became the church's co-pastor with his father. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a truly humble man, also did not find it important that we mention he won the Nobel Peace Prize and over 300 other awards. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s finest legacy of greater social justice for all Americans was truly reflected in his devotion to serve and respect others and his steadfast love for all humanity. And whereas, standing in a long line of great American black leaders, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. represents the historical culmination and the living embodiment of a spirit of united purpose rooted in black African culture and the American dream. And whereas, an apostle of peace, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought unrelentingly for the civil rights of all Americans and taught us that through nonviolence, courage displaces fear, love transforms hate, Acceptance dissipates prejudice, and mutual regard cancels enmity. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. manifestly contributed to the cause of America's freedom, and his commitment to human dignity is visibly mirrored in the spiritual, economic, and political dimensions of the civil rights movement. And whereas, in addition, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life was devoted to the liberation of his people, and his courage transcended the advocates of mindless retrenchment. And whereas it is the sense of this legislative body that the common and shared responsibility of governance demands an irrevocable commitment to the preservation and enhancement of human dignity as exemplified by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And whereas upon the occasion of the celebration of the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it is the practice of this legislative body to commemorate the heroic efforts of Dr. King, who loved and served humanity and who was a drum major for peace, justice, and righteousness. And whereas the 2024 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday observance marks the 95th anniversary of his birth and the 39th annual holiday celebrated in the state of New York in his honor. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pause in its deliberations to memorialize and pay tribute to the legendary life and achievements of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. upon the occasion of the anniversary of his birth and the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the state of New York and throughout the nation. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution, suitably engrossed, be transmitted to the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus.
Leader Stewart-Cousins on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. Yesterday was the celebration of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and it's one that I have the privilege to mark in my district and beyond. Fortunately, there were about 5 different events that I had the privilege of attending, and I'm happy that there were 5 different events because each event reminds us of where we came from, where we are, and where we have to go. And as I think of this celebration, not only of our team, but now the recognition of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and how it is also intertwined. Dr. King's struggle for the American dream was deeply and still is deeply rooted in our Constitution. And the Constitution that says that all men are created equal. And the expansion of what that means through voting, through electing people who understand the magnitude of creating equal justice for all, allows for the immersion of legislation and policies that bring the talents of all people to this great nation. So back in 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was signed as a result of the marches, the peaceful marches, the journey, which was not peaceful, over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where people were hosed and dogs set upon them, beaten, was so that people could have the right to vote, so that people would be brought into these chambers and given an opportunity to articulate legislatively the American dream. The American dream that allows for me to stand here as the leader of the Senate, for you to be acting as presiding officer, and for all of us, no matter where we came from, the different shores that many of us traveled from, to be in this chamber, to be able to create policy that continues to bring forth the Constitution that says all men are created equal. That's what Dr. King stood for. And that's why we continue to honor his legacy. Some years you feel that everybody gets it and we're all doing well, And the celebration of Dr. King is perfunctory. Oh, Dr. King, we shall overcome. My 2.5-year-old twin grandchildren sing a song about Dr. Martin Luther King. They can barely figure out what they're saying, but they do know how to say no fighting, no fighting. My 21-year-old grandson turned 21 on Dr. King's birthday. The difference in understanding of my 2.5-year-olds and my 21-year-old are quite profound. And I think it represents a lot of us. Some of us never understood the struggle, and some of us struggle every single day. Some of us know the words but not the music, and some of us just know the music. But I, who had the privilege of being alive when the civil rights struggle was at its height, I, who have stood in this chamber over and over again talking about where my parents were disenfranchised and, you know, my grandparents before them, but stand here as a dream keeper because of the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who believed in nonviolent protests, who believed that social change could happen if we allowed our hearts and our minds to be unified in the love for humanity. I am so happy that I could stand in this chamber today with colleagues who understand what Dr. King's legacy means, whose shoulders we all stand on, who can celebrate young people who, because of a vision of expansion and equality, are able to achieve national championships. And I hope year after year, the dream of Dr. King is more manifest, not only in these chambers, but beyond. And again, thank you so much for honoring this day.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. As always, an incredibly difficult act to follow. Madam Leader struck a chord speaking about music. And it's something resonates about music in this day for me. It is always an honor to be able to speak on this resolution on this floor because it's the first thing I spoke about as a member of the New York State Senate. And in my time here, the meaning of it has changed because my children have gotten older. And I see life through the lens of my children. And each year, now my 4th grader and my 2nd grader, they learn different things. Their level of understanding about who Dr. King was and what he did increases year by year. And it's a really proud moment for me to check in about what they're learning in school about who he was, but most importantly about what he's continued to do. When the leader spoke about music, I thought about J. Cole's song, Love Yours, when he says there's beauty in the struggle, ugliness in the success. That struggle was beautiful. But that success that he had, it's still ugly. There's still rampant racism. There's still redlining. There's still voter suppression. There's still so many things, economic injustice. The list goes on and on. These things are still happening that Dr. King fought for. So it's important to celebrate who he was, but what his message is. Dr. King was a reverend first. And as a reverend, he talked about probably the book of James. The book of James says faith without works is dead. So he wasn't just a dreamer, he was a doer. So just to dream isn't enough. We must do. And so I was thinking about some things that were happening and how much I love sneakers, Madam President. And not just because I couldn't walk a mile in Dr. King's shoes, none of us could. Not just because of the miles that he marched. I thought about sneakers, and sometimes you have sneakers and you have things that you want to wait to wear, right? And you wait for the right time. And you're waiting for that moment. I don't know about today, I don't know about tomorrow. But sometimes we got to realize that we got to put those sneakers on before they don't fit. Or even worse, we run out of steps. In 39 years of life, The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King traveled over 6 million miles, delivered over 2,500 speeches, wrote 5 books, and is the only person, the only singular person to have a holiday named after them. He made the most out of his time. He squeezed every single bit of life into the 39 years that he had on this earth. And when we read about him, when we speak about him, it still seems unreal. It seems surreal that he was only 39 at the time of his passing. Yet he was. You know, he had a phrase, live together as brothers or perish as fools. And at one of the MLK celebrations yesterday, there was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Durley who actually walked with Dr. King. And so it's always interesting when we hear, like, an interpretation, this is what Dr. King would have said. This is what Dr. King would have done. There was a brother there who walked with the man. And he had a medallion on, an I Have a Dream medallion. And in order to wear that medallion publicly, you have to call someone who marched with Dr. King. I was yesterday years old, as they say, when I learned that. There are things about the movement that we're still learning, and there are things that we still have yet to learn. You know, he said that everybody can be great because anybody can serve. Those of us that serve in government in this chamber but serve in life realize that. You know, as I close, I think about a quote from John Greenleaf Whittier, a Quaker American poet in the 19th century, who said in his poem entitled Mauden Muller, "For all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest of these, it might have been." We should make sure that we live out Dr. King's dream, and not just his dream, what he did and how to continue to further it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Sanders on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. The previous speakers have done so well, so I won't go in their direction. I'll take it in a different direction. I thank our leader for bringing this resolution. It is so important, especially in this day and age of media disinformation, where outside of the Bible, I would argue that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is probably the most misquoted, misdirected. People are taking his conversations completely into areas almost exactly opposite of what he is speaking about. Whether we speak about the Middle East, affirmative action, Black Lives Matter, his conversation has been taken and distorted by so many people that sometimes it's necessary to drill down a little bit deeper and to try to figure out what are some core concepts that he believed in. And I will offer you 3, and I'm sure everyone in here, God willing, will have their own 3, but I'll give 3 to you. I would argue that he is speaking of a refusal to participate in injustice, first and foremost, not going to participate in injustice. He's also saying that he believes in the possible redemption of the human family, that whoever he is opposing at that moment is not without redemption, that we can get to a higher place. But he tops it all off by bringing a commitment to putting his body on the line, that he is going to personally put his body on the line and say, I'm not only going to be against this injustice, I do believe in the redemption, but I'm going to give the people, the person or the situation a chance to redeem themselves by me putting my body here and saying this injustice will not continue. You'll have to come through me and the others, but we want you to change. We want you to change in a different way. And he did this while rallying, educating and rallying and growing the list of the righteous, of those who are on the right side of a cause, and offering everybody a chance to you're not stuck in your history, that you can get out of that. You're not stuck on stupid, that we can get to a greater place and all of us can go forward. So I would suggest to you again that those are three concepts that I think are important to understand when we speak of King, and otherwise we're going to, the day will descend into buying stupid things, and a day of holiday without meaning, where we don't know why we're doing it or what we're doing. We're just out there doing something. We'll sing songs we have no idea what they mean and probably don't agree with the songs otherwise. So having said that, again, I am grateful for the opportunity, Madam Leader. I think it's so important to bring this again and again until finally we get there, because we can all get to that beloved community that he spoke of when we learn to turn to each other and not on each other. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam.
Senator May on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Madam Leader, for bringing this resolution and for your powerful words. I was 7 years old when my family and hundreds of thousands of white families all around the country were shocked and horrified by the images on our television of the brutality that met Dr. King and John Lewis and the others who made that first attempt to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. And we watched the interview with Dr. King where he said he was planning to try again, and he called on white allies around the country to join him. My grandfather was one of the allies who joined him. He left his comfortable home in Los Angeles, took a short leave from his job, and he went to Selma. And we were terrified. We were afraid for his safety, but we were also very proud. Dr. King taught us a lot of lessons with his words and with his actions. The one that sticks with me the most is the lesson never to be a bystander. And I think that's a lesson, sadly, that we still carry today when it comes to racial injustice. I was honored and grateful that my committee was able to hold a hearing last month about concentrated poverty in our smaller cities. The city I represent and a number of other cities along the Thruway are perennially ranked among the worst for child poverty in the entire country. And this is a legacy of racial injustice, which still shapes our cities today. I'm grateful to Dr. King for the lessons he taught, and I try on a daily basis not to be a bystander, but I think there is an awful lot that we still need to do to make his words ring true for us today. I was at an event, a beautiful event in Auburn on Sunday where young people read the words of Dr. King, and I couldn't help but feel like the vision, the beautiful vision that he had for a world of much greater tolerance and less racial division. In the world where I live, that's not true today. So we still have to make sure we are not bystanders and that we continue to do the hard work, sometimes the dangerous work, sometimes the truly difficult work of trying to make his words the truth. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand with an extraordinary honor to recognize Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I want to thank our Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, for bringing this resolution to the floor. What a real privilege it is to be able to stand on this floor and honor such an extraordinary man, a true man of honor, of integrity, of devotion, someone who I was not alive to see in action as I was born 8 years after his untimely death, but that over the years I've learned more and more about, including each and every day, each and every year, we celebrate and honor his legacy. And it's a constant reminder as we celebrate this individual who had such an indelible mark on our democracy, on our nation, on human rights across the world. And, you think about what he stood for. The greatest of society needs, he stood for and fought for: human rights and civil rights and labor rights and equality and justice each and every day of his life. And when I think about the legacy he left behind, and I think about the work that we do here still today, and all of the needs in society that still remain, his work is yet to be done. His vision is yet to be satisfied. We have an obligation to see his vision through to reality. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. You think about how far our nation has come, and you think about how far we still need to go. Think about the dire poverty that still exists. You think about the horrific statistics in healthcare discrepancies between people of color and their white counterparts. You think about the children that go to school, even here in the great empire state of New York, that are distracted through their education because they haven't had a meal to start the day because of the conditions they're coming from in poverty at home. We've got so much work to do as communities across New York, as a state, and as a nation. But we have Dr. King's vision. We have Dr. King's commitment to doing what is right. We have his dream and his words and his actions that we can follow. And each and every time I have the opportunity to learn more about him, it to me is an enlightening moment. For example, last night, as I was watching a documentary on his life called I Am MLK Jr. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch. And you had some of the greatest civil rights leaders of all time that stood by and with Dr. King, some of which still are here today. The great Reverend Jesse Jackson, that I and my family had the opportunity to meet at Rosie O'Grady's, was in for a bite to eat with his family down in Manhattan as I was there with my family. And I went up and I said, oh my God, I said, Reverend Jackson, what an opportunity, what an amazing honor it is to meet you. You know what he did? He moved the table. He said, come on, bring your family over, sit on down. And he starts talking to us. You know what his shirt said? Anybody? Vote. V-O-T-E. Vote. And then you hear him in this documentary talk about the struggles that Dr. King had and the despair that he had watching the nation going in the wrong direction when it pertained to civil rights, when it pertained to the Vietnam War. What an incredible visionary prophet Dr. King was. And you look back, and hindsight's 20/20. And that includes in our nation's history. And you see the vision of peace and prosperity that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had and drove forward as a national message. So it is right that we honor him here today on the Senate floor here in New York. But it's right that we honor him through our actions every day. Whether we're here in this chamber governing and making laws, or whether we're out in the community, whether we're elected, or whether we're community leaders, thinking about his vision for America and following in his footsteps through our actions is the greatest tribute we can ever have to that extraordinary and wonderful man. And I will say one last thing that one of his children posted last night, that one way that we can continue to honor Dr. King is also by honoring his wife, Coretta Scott King. And as I often say, behind every great man is an even better woman. And she stood by him through all the trials and tribulations and struggles, and I think was the rock in his life behind his great success and determination in transforming the trajectory of this great nation. And as one of his colleagues mentioned in this documentary last night, and I'll end with this, aside from the election of President Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, the 12 years that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement before his death in 1968 was the most transformational piece of history in the entirety of the history of this great United States of America. Thank you, Dr. King.
Senator Webb on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank our Majority Leader for bringing this resolution forward to recognize Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy, who would have been 95 years old this year. You know, as we're here in the Senate chamber remembering the legacy of Dr. King, someone who was not only, as my colleague Senator Kennedy just noted, one of the most pivotal and greatest leaders for civil rights here in this country, but also the world. I mean, he was a global leader on efforts around humanitarianism. His efforts were designed to really advance justice and liberation. And so it is worth noting, and we all are familiar with his speech that was given during the March on Washington, I Have the Dream speech. And one of the things that I often like to lift up is that after that time, in reflecting on the state of this nation during that time and subsequently, Dr. King also realized the very daunting challenge that we have of actualizing that dream. And he talks about it in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos? And when you think about the climate that we're in right now, that same idea of where do we go from here, here in this chamber, we have an obligation and an opportunity to really create community through equitable policies and practices. And so, in looking at his legacy and lifting up the importance of women, as we were talking about earlier when we recognized the lacrosse team breaking records, we also know women played a very pivotal role in assisting and guiding Dr. King in the legacy that he created. His wife, Coretta Scott, few days after he was assassinated, to be clear, he didn't sacrifice his life, he was killed. His wife, a few days later, led the effort and kept pushing until, in working with a lot of national leaders, to actually get his birthday memorialized. And also establishing his legacy center that's down in Georgia. And so, again, when we talk about legacy and how we are leaving our communities better than what we found them, it's important that we lift up the voices that are often marginalized and make sure that we are being more intentional in lifting up the legacy and living it through policies and practices of Dr. King, because he was most certainly committed to eradicating racism, eradicating poverty, and eradicating war. And so it is with that legacy, as I said earlier, we have a responsibility to do that, and we can do that in this chamber through our policies. When you think about some of the stats that a lot of our families, working families, are dealing with still to this day, and we're now in the budget, and so we're gonna have those conversations around where do we make those investments, I think it is paramount, especially on a day like today where we are recalling this great man's legacy, that it is imperative that we continue to work diligently to center the voices and needs of those who are often most forgotten. And so as I, close, I would be remiss if I didn't lift up another important woman in Dr. King's life, and that was his daughter, Dr. Bernice King, who also shared yesterday that, especially for folks like us who are elected and other leaders, that when we evoke the name of her father, it is paramount that we tell the totality of his legacy, and more importantly, beyond words, but through actions, policies, and practices. That is how we honor him. Again, I want to thank all of my colleagues for your remarks, and I look forward to us doing the good work and continuing to advance the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Thank you so much.
Senator Ramos on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I too rise to celebrate one of the greatest Americans to have ever lived, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I want to celebrate the radical King, the Dr. King who was an economic crusader and a teacher to Americans, who reminded us that although Black people weren't emancipated until 1863, less than 20 years before, the American government had enacted a sense of manifest destiny, of westward expansion, where homesteads and acres of land were gifted to European immigrants, allowing them to have an economic base, while Black people, recently liberated Black people, were not. And that had fundamentally sowed the years of segregation, of prejudice, and of racism that we continue to try to end today. Dr. King talked about how Black people and people of color, because he wasn't only a leader for Black people, but for all working families, who talked about how people had to work full-time to get part-time income. It's been 55 years since the assassination of Dr. King, and I, as chair of the Labor Committee here in this legislative body, continue with our committee to crusade ourselves towards greater income equality, which is so sorely needed here in New York State, where there are so many working families who are constantly on the brink of eviction, entire generations who are saddled with student debt, and who have been unable to realize the American dream, which is supposedly to buy a home. In fact, it's been so dire, our economic condition, that just last year in 2023, we saw nearly 500,000 workers across this country engage in nearly 300 work stoppages. Because at the end of the day, there is no greater nonviolent collective action than the right to strike. The right to be able, as a worker, to tell your boss, no, I will not work for crumbs. Yes, you will recognize my dignity, and dignity is defined by the honest respect that every human being has. The right that every human being has to a living wage, to benefits, to time off. So many of the things that we've been able to champion precisely here in this Senate body. It's incredible to see how his dream, and I truly do believe that we should redefine what we tend to think as the American dream to actually make sure it matches with Dr. King's dream. To judge a person by the content of their character, meaning by their ability to be of service to others, meaning by their ability to be able to provide for themselves and their family, no matter where they come from. What matters is that we have a shared mutuality, and therefore we have a shared destiny, that it is about where we are going together. And so with that, I just want to say how proud I am that we are once again engaging in this annual tradition of recognizing Dr. King and his work. Because without him, I would not be here, and neither would nearly every other legislator of color in this body. Many people don't recognize that in 1965, with the Voting Rights Act, it wasn't just about securing suffrage for Black people. It took the Voting Rights Act for Latinos to be able to vote in this country. I would not be able to vote as a New York, Queens-born Colombiana if it wasn't for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And if I couldn't vote, I wouldn't be able to run for office and stand before you here today. And for that, all I want to say is gracias, Dr. King, y feliz cumpleaños.
Senator Lanza on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. It is an honor to rise to speak on this resolution. First, of course, I want to thank Senator Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins for bringing this to the floor. You know, I enjoy listening to all my colleagues, but I especially enjoy listening to you, Leader, on this resolution. You speak with such intelligence, tenderness, and strength, and I think that is so appropriate and fitting, given who it is that you are speaking of. You know, you all know I don't speak on resolutions. It's not my thing, as Senator Bailey would say. But every year, I make an exception for this one. And I do enjoy listening to my colleagues because while we have our differences, I think the words that you hear on this day every year truly reflects our collective aspirations and really describes why it is, from whatever walk of life, from whatever side of the aisle, from whatever our belief system is, explains why we serve. I think when we speak about Dr. Martin Luther King, at its core, we talk about public service, and we talk about where we one day hope to be. You know, Senator Bailey talked about this. You know, as a Christian growing up, whenever you thought about making sure you were doing the right thing, one of the things you might ask is, what would Jesus do? Or what would Jesus say? And you don't see that anywhere else in our society, in our culture, at least that I know of, except for when you talk about MLK. And people do say, what would he have said? What would he be doing? And I think that speaks to the profound nature of what he represented, who he was and who he is, the moral certainty and certitude. But as Senator Sanders said, this is complicated. When you think about someone as great as Dr. Martin Luther King, we all want to make him our own. We all want to use his words to prove that we are right. We sometimes want to weaponize those words to say, you are wrong. And that's what's complicated. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, because we need to, I think, dip into the well of all that he gave us as guidance for what we tried to accomplish today. So I think it's appropriate, but it's complicated. You know, I think Abraham Lincoln said this in one of the greatest inaugural addresses ever, the second one. He alluded to this idea when he said that about the Civil War, that both sides read the same Bible, both sides pray to the same God, and both sides invoke his aid against the other. And you see that with Dr. Martin Luther King. So it's complicated. So I'm not going to today speculate as to what he would be saying right now. And the great thing about his life and when he lived is that we know what he said. We don't have to guess. So some of the things I think about that are as pertinent today as they ever were, that he said, was that hatred paralyzes life and love releases it. He warned, and these are his words, that we should not love publicity, we should love justice. And of course, my favorite is that he said, hate cannot defeat hate, only love can conquer hate. So whatever you want to think about what Dr. Martin Luther King would say today, we have his words, and I can't think of any better words for this time than those words and many of the others that he spoke to me. It was said, I agree, he was one of the greatest Americans who ever lived, even though he was a Republican. You know, I think Dr. Martin Luther King's story is America's story, the struggle for freedom and liberty. And yes, it's a struggle. Life is a struggle. But I truly do believe that if we ever wipe tyranny in all its wicked forms from this earth, it was Dr. Martin Luther King who helped show the way. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Helming on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I, too, would like to thank Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins for continuing to bring this important resolution to the floor. And I want to join with everybody who has offered so many profound words, if you will, honoring the life and enduring legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Although I will say right up front that my message is going to be much simpler, much shorter, but I believe just as important as what's already been said. I think back to just a couple of weeks ago on the opening day of this year's legislative session, the Lieutenant Governor, Antonio Delgado, presiding as temporary president of the Senate, standing in the very same spot you are, Madam President, encouraged us as state senators to be mindful of what Dr. King referred to as unenforceable obligations. I've been thinking about that a lot since the LG brought it up. Dr. King said these obligations are beyond the reach of the laws of society. They concern inner attitudes, genuine person-to-person relations, and expressions of compassion that law books cannot regulate and jails cannot rectify. Such obligations are met by one's commitment to inner laws, what's written on the heart. Dr. King's words are a reminder to me, and I imagine to every single person who's in this chamber, of the profound responsibility we carry as individuals and also as elected leaders to look deep within our hearts about the choices we make and how our words and actions impact others. We all can lead by example. We can all treat others how we want to be treated. We can show kindness and compassion to our neighbors. We can be good Samaritans and serve others. And though here on the Senate floor we may not always agree, we can approach each conversation and each debate with love and respect in our hearts. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Harkam on the resolution.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I normally don't speak on this resolution because I think it's more important for me to listen and learn how I can better be of service on this day, but I was struck by something that happened here today. The leader was talking about, and thank you, Madam Majority Leader, for bringing this resolution and for your continued leadership. The issue of progress and challenges and the dichotomy of both of those things. And the example we had in this chamber today, we just honored some national championships, some remarkable young women who, because of Title IX, had the same resources and the same opportunities as men and became national champions. The town that Pace University is located in has just been filed in a lawsuit brought under the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act because 5 Hispanic residents felt disenfranchised because of the at-large voting system. So I want to be careful not to disparage the town of Mount Pleasant. They will have their day in court. But the fact that people today are still feeling disenfranchised because of who they are, their race or their origin, and the fact that we in this chamber, in this case through the leadership of Senator Myrie and the Majority Leader and others, have given them an avenue of redress, is an important example of the role that we continue to play as we try to advance Dr. King's, not only his life, but his legacy and the work that we still need to do. So I vote aye on this important resolution.
Senator Thomas on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Leader, and other speakers before me. I owe a lot to Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And just like we heard from Senator Jessica Ramos about the Voting Rights Act, if it wasn't for the civil rights movement, immigration laws would not have changed. And people from the South Asian community would not have been able to immigrate here decades ago. I would not be able to go to the schools that I went to if it wasn't for the civil rights movement and to Martin Luther King. My family would not have been able to buy the home that they live in if it wasn't for the civil rights movement. I owe a lot to Martin Luther King. You know, all of us here in this chamber have so much power to do good and to make changes. But we don't have to be a senator or an elected official to do that. Martin Luther King said it best: be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a little star. Be the best of whatever you are. I serve today as a senator to help others. Thank you, Dr. King, for leading the way. I vote aye.
Senator Rollison on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I, too, like my friend and colleague, Senator Harkam, generally listen. But I wanted to just briefly talk about 2 services that I went to celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The first one was at Beulah Baptist Church, and it's always the Sunday before. And a friend of the leader, thank you for bringing this forward, Bishop James Hassel from the city of Yonkers was there. And I've listened to a lot of preachers at that church, and I will tell you that was one of the most riveting acts of preaching that I have ever heard. And I was troubled when I left because what he talked about was Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, and how he talked about dreams today are not like dreams before. Dreams are deferred for lots of reasons. It's almost like we're not allowed to dream. Children growing up are exposed to so many things which are deferring those dreams. How can you dream when everything you see or hear can be negative? And we all sat there with this look on our face. He was speaking about something that is so true. And so when I left there that night, I was troubled. I was upset. I said to myself, maybe I'm not even dreaming anymore. Maybe I'm worried about too much. Maybe I'm thinking about too much. So the next day, I went to Springfield Baptist Church in the city of Beacon. And we sang and we marched, and I felt good. We went back to the church for a service, but it started out with song and reflective prayer. But then there was an essay contest where the winners from the Beacon City School District, from second grade right up to senior, 5 of them were picked out of 23 essays from that school district about Dr. King, what he stood for, and what he said. And what I will tell you is, dreams were on display at Springfield Baptist Church. And I felt good about that, because I learned something from the tiniest to the senior about the things that he said and what they thought they meant. They were thinking, and they were dreaming about things that he dreamed about. So as my colleague and friend, Senator Kennedy, said, we've done a lot, we've got a lot to do, and together, Madam President, we can do that, and I proudly vote aye.
The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution is adopted. Senator Gianaris.
Madam President, I know we've already voted on the resolution, but just to correct the record and all the wonderful accolades about Martin Luther King, it was slipped in there that he was a Republican. In fact, that is absolutely untrue. Scholars will tell you that that is something invented by Trump supporters in the last several years to advance their cause. So let's just be very clear so nobody thinks that was actually true.
Could we not
Madam
let it
President,
slide? Oh my God.
Madam President, the sponsor of both resolutions we took up today would like to open them for co-sponsorship.
The resolutions are open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor of the resolutions, please notify the desk. Senator Gianaris.
And we now take up the reading of the calendar, please.
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 14, Senate Print 8005 by Senator Mayer, enactment of the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law of 2023.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 29, Senate Print 8026 by Senator Webb, enactment of chapter of the law of 2003.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law of 2023.
Read the last section.
Call the roll.
Sorry, call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Senator Webb to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote. You know, again, last year I had the honor of being before this chamber and lifting up this important bill that in my remarks last year, I lifted up the fact that BIPOC missing and murdered women and girls is a growing epidemic nationally, and most certainly we're seeing it here in New York. You know, as the numbers continue to go up, unfortunately, we also learned that the manner in which resources are allocated to address this public safety issue is not the same for BIPOC missing and murdered women and girls. And so New York being a major gateway state for a variety of reasons, our location, we're a big state for tourism and so many other positive attributes, and at the same time, we still have significant challenges around human trafficking, and when it comes to this issue, unfortunately, BIPOC women and girls are often mischaracterized as runaways, and so they're not given the same level of consideration We also saw in Rochester, for instance, that when a young woman of color went missing, an Amber Alert was not issued for her. And so the stories continue to compile. And so this legislation is taking a long overdue and important step to remedying this issue here in our state by addressing the gap in care and concern for BIPOC victims of abduction and human trafficking. And so, again, I want to thank my colleagues for their support, unanimous support for this legislation. It is imperative that with this task force, which this legislation creates and brings together state agencies along with community advocates, we really have an opportunity and an obligation to not only render justice for BIPOC missing and murdered women and girls, but also justice and supports for their families so that they can heal. And so I want to thank the Majority Leader for her support of this legislation. Also all of you, my colleagues, Assemblymember Karina Reyes, who is the Assembly sponsor on this important legislation. Also the advocates such as Girl Val. You know, this type of landmark legislation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes many people to make it happen. And so I want to thank everyone that's worked on this. I proudly vote aye for this, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you so much, Madam President.
Senator Webb to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Ramos to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to very quickly applaud Senator Webb for her persistence in passing this bill, insisting that it become law as soon as possible. I represent Jackson Heights in Queens, one of the places that has most welcomed asylum seekers who are many times seen as prime targets precisely for human trafficking, whether it's for sex work, whether it's for nail salon work or farm work. So many people, particularly women and women of color, are targeted because they are thought to be weak, because they are desperate to improve their economic standing and provide for their family. And we have to be able to put forth a much better way of life for immigrants and for so many people so that they do not fall into these traps and that law enforcement actually do their job in ending so many different human trafficking rings that exist across our city, New York City, and state. I just want to say thank you. I hope that this not only results in creating this division in our criminal justice system, but that it actually manifests an economic opportunity in employment authorization documents, work permits for people to be able to provide for themselves and their families properly. Thank you.
Senator Ramos to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed. There's a substitution at the desk. The secretary will read.
Senator Gurnardes moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill Number 8507, substituted for the identical Senate Bill 8029, third reading calendar 31.
Substitution so ordered. The secretary will read.
Calendar number 31, Assembly Number 8507 by Assemblymember Szilagyi, an act to amend the Civil Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of law 2023.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 36, Senate Print 8036 by Senator Thomas, an act to amend the General Business Law.
Laid aside.
Calendar number 46, Senate Print 8057 by Senator Rivera, an act to amend the Public Health Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of law 2023.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed. There's a substitution at the desk. The secretary will read.
Senator Jackson moves to discharge from the Committee on Rules Assembly Bill Number 8514 and substituted for the identical Senate Bill 8079, third reading calendar 61.
Substitution so ordered. Secretary will read.
Calendar number 61, Assembly Number 8514 by Assemblymember Fefa Amato, an act to amend the Civil Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner, chapter of the law 2023.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 64, Senate Print 8082 by Senator Sanders, enactment of the New York City Charter.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of law 2023.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results. Announce the results.
Relation to calendar 64, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Gallivan, Hellman, Rhodes, Skoufis, Walzek, and White. Ayes 54, nays 6.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 66, Senate Print 8086 by Senator Addabbo, enactment of the Racing, Parimutuel Wagering, and Breeding Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of law 2023.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Relation to calendar 66, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Kruger, Skoufis, and Walzek. Ayes 57, nays 3.
The bill is passed.
Calendar,
Senator Martinez.
excuse me, on that last bill, sorry. In relation to calendar 66, voted in the negative are Senators Kruger, Martinez, Skoufis, and Senator Walzek. Ayes 54, nays 6. 56 nays 4, pardon me.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 69, Senate Print 8089 by Senator Holman Siegel, enactment of chapter of law 2023.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart-Cousins, White.
Senator Helming to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote. Dyslexia can impact a person's mental health in a number of ways. In children, it can cause them to experience symptoms of depression, of anxiety, and make them feel like they aren't smart or capable of learning. So I support this bill, and I agree that we need to develop better screening methods for dyslexia and provide children with an education that truly meets their needs. But as we address this issue and others like it, we need to also ensure that our healthcare providers are empowered to provide the services our children need. I carry a bill, Senate Bill 4463, that would grant diagnosing privileges to current and future mental health counselors, family therapists, and psychoanalysts who complete necessary training. This will allow families greater access to much-needed services and ensure that conditions are diagnosed and treatment begins as soon as possible. Again, I support this bill and efforts to help our students with dyslexia succeed in our education system. But we can do more. We need to do more to help children and families access the services they need. That's why I'm voting yes, and also encouraging the Senate majority to bring my bill, Senate Bill 4463, to the floor for a vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Helming to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed. Senator Hoylman Siegel to explain his vote.
Madam President, I rise to thank my colleagues for their support of the underlying bill and this chapter amendment, including Maria Morrissey and Amanda Godkin for helping negotiate it. You know, dyslexia affects 250,000 students or more in the state of New York. It's estimated about 10% of our population struggles with dyslexia or dysgraphia. The problem has been in our state and in New York City and other municipalities, students are not screened for dyslexia. Parents have no idea that their kids can't read. My husband and I have a 13-year-old daughter. We did not learn of her dyslexia until the end of her 3rd grade, which is far too late for appropriate remediation. And you know, there are so many incredibly creative people with dyslexia because, as the Apple slogan reads, dyslexia forces you to think different. And there are people like Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, and other great thinkers of centuries past who have dyslexia. There are countless, though, men and women of color who never had the opportunity in our educational system to pursue greatness as those names I have mentioned, because, again, they were never identified as such. Our legislation will take the first step forward in creating a task force to establish best practices for all of those school kids. I want to thank Governor Hochul for her insightful approach on going back to basics and literacy, teaching phonics in our New York school system. And certainly my colleagues, Senator Lieu and Senator Mayer, understand that effort. And this legislation was inspired by my 13-year-old daughter, Sylvia, who became a bat mitzvah this past Saturday. And if you think reading English is difficult for a child with dyslexia, try Hebrew. But she succeeded, as countless other children can and will with dyslexia, hopefully with the assistance of this new task force. I vote aye.
Senator Holman Siegel to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results. You got to receive it.
Ayes 60.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 70, Senate Print 8090 by Senator Clear, enactment of state technology law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 70, voted in the negative are Senators Ort and Walzek, ayes 58, nays 2. Also, Senator O'Mara, ayes 57, nays 3.
The bill is passed. Senator Gineris, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Can we now go to the controversial calendar, please?
Secretary will ring the bell. The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 36, Senate Print 8036 by Senator Thomas, enactment of the general business law.
Senator Lanza, why do you rise?
Madam President, I believe there's an amendment at the desk. I waive the reading of that amendment and ask that you recognize Senator Martins to be heard.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. Upon review of the amendment, in accordance with Rule 6, Section 4B, I rule it non-germane and out of order at this time.
Accordingly, Madam President, I appeal the ruling of the chair and ask that you recognize Senator Martins.
The appeal has been made and recognized, and Senator Martins may be heard.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to appeal the ruling of the chair. Madam President, the proposed amendment is germane to the underlying bill because the underlying bill relates to the security of residential buildings, and the proposed amendment relates to ensuring the security of the community by enhancing penalties for those who obstruct traffic and access to buildings during protests. The proposed amendment creates a new offense of aggravated disorderly conduct. It would make it a Class A misdemeanor to obstruct traffic or access to any building as part of an unpermitted protest or demonstration. Frankly, Madam President, I think we've all seen the effects of unpermitted protests in our communities and the effects of those protests on our residents, not only those who are in residential buildings, those who are going to work, those who are trying to cross bridges and tunnels. We've all seen that impact. The proposed amendment would also allow for the offense to be charged as a hate crime, elevating the penalty to an E-felony where individuals engage in this disruptive and dangerous activity because of their hateful attitudes towards another race, nationality, ancestry, or religion. Madam President, it has been 102 days since Hamas committed the terrorist attacks against Israel on October 7th. We have seen terrorist sympathizers disruptively engaging in protests, blocking traffic, and access to public buildings, including airports and train stations. The actions of these hateful anti-Semites have not only made for the Jewish population to feel less safe, they have also put every resident of these communities at risk by preventing emergency services from getting to people who need them. This kind of conduct cannot be tolerated, and there must be consequences when someone creates this kind of danger. So, Madam President, for these reasons, I strongly urge you to reconsider your ruling.
Thank you, Senator. I want to remind the House that a vote is on the procedures of the House and the ruling of the chair. Those in favor of overruling the chair signify by saying aye. Aye. A show of hands has been requested and so ordered.
Ayes 20.
The ruling of the chair stands and the bill in chief is before the House. Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of laws 2023.
Senator Borrello.
Would the sponsor yield for some questions?
Senator Thomas, do you yield?
Yes, I yield
The sponsor
to Senator
yields.
Borrello, to my first debate of my last session. Let's go.
All right. With that being said, through you, Madam President. So I supported this bill, I believe, previously, and but there's some questions. After reading the bill a little more closely, you mentioned in your sponsor's memo, and I think the governor also referenced it, that this only applies to third parties that will be installing these keyless entry systems. So can you ensure that that only still applies to, in this bill? Because I don't see anything in the bill language that says it only applies strictly to third parties installing one of these keyless entry systems.
Through you, Madam President, this is a chapter amendment, and there are 3 specific revisions that we made to this bill that passed unanimously last year during session. With third parties, we didn't change anything on that specific definition.
Madam President, sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Yeah, so this is just some concerns on the language because it doesn't specifically spell out would only apply to third parties. So that's the concern. So with that being said, if the owner of a property installed one of these keyless security entry systems, would they be subject to the consequences of this bill, and not just a third party?
Through you, Madam President, it says here in the bill, Section 390E, unauthorized installation of certain security devices prohibited. No person, firm, partnership, association, or corporation shall install any keyless security device used to control and secure access to the common areas of a residential building without the express written consent of the owner, board of managers, board of directors, or authorized party of such property.
Madam President, sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So the property owner then would not be impacted by this legislation, is that correct?
Madam President, can you specify property owner?
Sure, may I answer the question? Okay, through you, Madam President. So here, the issue is that the understanding was this was only to apply to a third party like Amazon installing a keyless entry system. Unless I'm misreading this, this is now saying that the property owner is, you're saying, without the express permission of the property owner. But what if it is the property owner that's installing it?
Through you, Madam President, these are specific for residential buildings with more than 1 or 2 occupied tenants. So if anyone wants to install such a device, they have to put in notice and permission from those that are living there.
Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
There's some language in the bill that says that property owners would not be able to raise the rent if one of these systems is installed. Is that, but it seems rather vague, is that indefinite? In other words, if you install a keyless entry system, you can never raise the rent, ever, during the term of the and I realize that it makes you smile, but the reality is if it's not spelled out, that could certainly be interpreted that way potentially, legally.
Through you, Madam President, let me read the section. In no event shall the installation of such a system be considered a service nor be considered a reason for any purpose to increase rent. So this reading is basically saying it is not an improvement to the property that would lead a landlord to increase the rent.
The sponsor continue yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So, but that's not spelled out that way. If you were to say that a keyless entry system should not be considered a capital improvement, therefore leading to a potential increase in rent, then that would be a better way to say this, because the way it reads now is basically saying that if you install a keyless entry system, some of which, by the way, you can get, at a hardware store for $100, that you would not be able to, raise the rent. And I'm just worried that would be interpreted by someone as you can't raise the rent because you have a keyless entry system on your property.
Madam President, I mean, just the reading of this, it says the installation of such a system shall not be considered an improvement. So it specifically says that system.
Does the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So, so it's your definition, and I realize you're reading the language here, but that this would not preclude them from raising the rent. But what would be the period of time then before they would be able to raise the rent if they put a keyless entry system?
Through you, Madam President, this chapter amendment is specific for this installation of a device, which they're not considering as improving anything within the structure.
Madam President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So I think my last question here, this certainly makes a little bit more sense if you are in a long-term lease, a one-year lease or whatever, that this wouldn't be considered a capital improvement. But let's say, would this apply to, someone who does a short-term rental, vacation rental? I know a lot of people in that business, and they put a keyless entry system and change the code for every weekly rental. How would they be impacted by that?
Through you, Madam President, it does say, one of the last revisions here says it cannot adversely impact the way anyone uses that property. So, we already have that spelled out in the chapter amendment.
Madam President, on the bill.
Senator Borrello on the bill.
First of all, Senator Thomas, thank you again for your kicking off your session with a debate on this. I think that, look, I didn't stand up here today to ask questions just to hear myself talk, although I'm sure some of you think that's the case. It's because there are serious questions about this, and it seemed a rather innocuous bill, maybe would help some folks out. I fear that the way the language is in the bill, that it could be misinterpreted to mean that if you put a keyless entry system on your piece of property, you can't raise the rent. Now, we might all sit around here as very practical people and say, oh, no, that's not the case. But, there's a lot of folks out there that are in the business of getting paid for legal services that might disagree. So that concerns me. I have supported this in the past, but due to the questions here, I'm going to be a no. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Are there any other senators wishing to be heard? Seeing and hearing none, debate is closed. Secretary will ring the bell. Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2023.
Senator Gineris.
We've agreed to restore this bill to the non-controversial calendar. Please take it up that way.
Okay. Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the law 2023.
Call the roll.
Dabo, Giannaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 36, those senators voting in the negative are Senators Borrello, Murray, O'Mara, and Walczak. Ayes 56, nays 4.
The bill is passed. Senator Gineris, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the desk.
I move to adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, January 17th at 11 a.m.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Wednesday, January 17th at 11 a.m.